The salt-tinged breeze carried the sound of children's laughter across the crowded beach, but Marcus heard none of it. His eyes were fixed downward, shoulders hunched as he pushed his daughter's wheelchair through the sand, each step a battle against the shifting ground beneath them. The looks, he always felt the looks. Pity from some, discomfort from others, curiosity from children quickly shushed by embarrassed parents. After 2 years, he still wasn't used to it. After 2 years of being both mother and father to 8-year-old Lily, after 2 years of hospital visits and therapy sessions and sleepless nights wondering if he was doing any of it right, Marcus had learned to keep his eyes down. It was easier that way. "Daddy, can we get closer to the water?" Lily's voice broke through his thoughts, bright and hopeful despite everything she'd been through. That voice was the only thing that kept him going some days. "Sure, sweetheart," Marcus replied, adjusting his grip on the wheelchair handles and steering toward a quieter spot near the shoreline. The beach had been Lily's idea. Their new neighbor had mentioned it was accessible, with a special mat laid down for wheelchairs during summer months. Marcus had been skeptical, but Lily had been so excited when they'd moved into the small coastal apartment 3 weeks ago that he couldn't say no. As he maneuvered the wheelchair over a particularly stubborn patch of sand, one of the wheels caught on something buried beneath the surface. Marcus jerked forward, losing his balance, and stumbled directly into someone standing just ahead of them. "Oh God, I'm so sorry." Marcus started, his face burning with embarrassment. His eyes instinctively went to what he'd collided with, a bright purple prosthetic leg, intricate and unapologetically visible beneath a pair of shorts. "Eyes are up here." The words were delivered with such warmth and humor that Marcus's head snapped up, mortification flooding through him. He found himself looking into the amused face of a woman about his age, with sun-lightened brown hair pulled back in a messy bun and smile lines crinkling around her hazel eyes. I didn't mean to." Marcus stammered, the heat in his cheeks intensifying. He was stunned, not by the prosthetic, but by his own thoughtlessness, by being caught in the very act he'd spent 2 years resenting when others did it to his daughter. The woman laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to dissolve the tension hanging in the air. "Relax, I'm just messing with you. Though I have to say, you're easier to fluster than most." She looked past him to Lily, and her expression softened. "Hey there, I'm Rachel. I live in apartment 3B, you're the new neighbors, right?" "I'm Lily," his daughter chirped, immediately brightening. "That's my dad, Marcus. He's really nice but he gets nervous around new people." "Lily." Marcus protested weakly, but Rachel was already laughing again. "Well, Lily, it's wonderful to meet you both officially. I've been meaning to come by with cookies or something appropriately neighborly, but I've been swamped with work." Rachel glanced down at her prosthetic, then back at Marcus, her expression knowing. "And hey, no worries about the staring thing. I get it more than you might think." Something in her tone made Marcus really look at her, not at her leg, but at her eyes, which held a depth of understanding that couldn't be faked. "I really am sorry," he said quietly. "That was incredibly rude of me. I should know better." "Because of me," Lily announced proudly. "I use a wheelchair because my spine got hurt in the car accident that killed my mom. But Dad says I'm still the same person, just with wheels now." Marcus's breath caught. Lily rarely mentioned the accident so matter-of-factly, and never to strangers. He watched Rachel carefully, waiting for the usual response, the head tilt of sympathy, the "bless your heart" platitudes, the uncomfortable subject change. Instead, Rachel crouched down so she was at Lily's eye level, unbothered by the sand sticking to her prosthetic. "You know what? Your dad is absolutely right. I lost my leg to cancer when I was 14, and people told me my life was over. They said I'd never surf again, never dance, never feel normal." She grinned. Turns out they were wrong about everything except the normal part, but who wants to be normal anyway? Lily's eyes went wide. "You can surf. Every weekend. In fact, that's why I'm here today. I teach adaptive surfing lessons for kids. We've got special boards and a whole crew of volunteers." Rachel stood, brushing sand from her knees, and looked at Marcus. "You guys should come check it out sometime. No pressure, just, if you're interested." Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a loosening of a knot he'd been carrying since the day everything changed. "I don't know," he started, his protective instincts flaring. "Lily's still building her strength, and I'm not sure if. Can we, Daddy? Please." Lily's face was alight with an excitement Marcus hadn't seen in months. "Listen," Rachel said gently, addressing Marcus. "I'm not trying to overstep. But I've spent the last 15 years of my life proving that what happened to my body doesn't define what I can do with it. And from what I've seen of you two over the past few weeks, yes, I've been watching from my balcony, total creeper status, you're doing an amazing job. But maybe Lily isn't the only one who needs to learn that her life isn't over." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow, not because they were harsh, but because they were true. He'd been so focused on protecting Lily, on making sure she didn't feel limited by her wheelchair, that he'd built a cage around both of them. He chose accessible places only, avoided crowds, kept to routines that felt safe. He'd convinced himself it was for Lily's benefit, but standing here now, seeing the hope in his daughter's eyes, he realized he'd been protecting himself from his own fears. "Okay," he heard himself say. "Yeah, okay, let's try it." Over the following weeks, Saturday mornings became sacred. Rachel picked them up at 9, her specially modified van somehow always stocked with fresh coffee for Marcus and chocolate chip muffins for Lily. The adaptive surfing program was everything she'd promised, a community of kids and adults with various disabilities, supported by volunteers who understood that accessibility wasn't about limitations but possibilities. Marcus watched from the beach as Rachel and the other instructors guided Lily onto a wide, stable surfboard, securing her safely while letting her feel the rush of riding even small waves. His daughter screamed with delight each time, her arms raised in triumph, and Marcus found himself crying more than once behind his sunglasses. But something else was happening too. Marcus started talking to other parents, sharing stories and frustrations and small victories. He learned about adaptive sports leagues, accessible travel destinations, and medical equipment he'd never known existed. The isolation he'd wrapped around himself like armor began to crack, letting light seep through. And then there was Rachel herself. She never pushed, never pried, but her presence became a constant Marcus found himself looking forward to. She challenged him, about his assumptions, his limitations, his tendency to make decisions based on fear rather than possibility. She also made him laugh more than he had in years, sharing absurd stories from her job as a physical therapist and her own adventures in dating as an amputee. Third date, she told him one evening as they watched Lily play with other kids in the sand, he asked if I'd take my leg off during sex. Not even in a curious way, in a fetish way. I threw my drink at him. Marcus choked on his coffee. "You didn't." "I absolutely did. Raspberry mojito," right in his smug face. She grinned. "Worth it, even though that restaurant was expensive." 4 months into their friendship, Marcus finally worked up the courage to ask the question that had been nagging at him. They were sitting on Rachel's balcony while Lily had a sleepover with her new best friend from the surf program, the first sleepover Marcus had allowed since the accident. "Why did you help us?" he asked quietly. "That day on the beach, you could have just walked away. I literally ran into you and stared at your leg. Most people would have been offended." Rachel was quiet for a moment, staring out at the darkening ocean. "Because I remembered being 14 and in the hospital, watching my mom's face every time she looked at me. She tried to hide it, but I could see the grief there, the fear. She was mourning who I used to be instead of seeing who I was becoming." She turned to Marcus, her expression serious. "That day on the beach, when I saw you with Lily, I recognized that same look. You were so busy protecting her from other people's stares that you'd forgotten to actually see her. And Lily, she was trying so hard to be brave for you." Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. "I was so scared of failing her. Of not being enough." "Marcus," Rachel said softly, reaching over to squeeze his hand, "you're already enough. You've always been enough. You just needed to believe it." The touch of her hand sent warmth spreading through Marcus's chest, and suddenly he was seeing Rachel clearly, not as the neighbor who'd been kind to his daughter, not as the instructor who'd opened up their world, but as the woman who'd somehow become essential to his life. The woman who made him want to be brave, to take risks, to believe in possibilities he'd long since abandoned. "Rachel, he started, his heart hammering. "I know," she said, and the smile on her face was radiant. "I know, Marcus." Their first kiss tasted like salt air and chocolate and hope. A year later, Marcus stood on that same beach, watching Rachel guide Lily through the waves. His daughter was standing on the surfboard now, supported by a special harness and Rachel's steady hands, riding a wave all the way to shore. The cheers from the beach were deafening, and Marcus added his voice to the chorus, his heart so full he thought it might burst. That evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Marcus gathered both Lily and Rachel close. His family, hard-won and beautiful and nothing like what he'd imagined, but perfect in every way that mattered. "Thank you," he whispered to Rachel over Lily's head. "For what?" she asked, genuine puzzlement in her eyes. "For reminding me to look up."